children need special attention so that there should be equity among the so-called normal and those who are of the disabled community. Another question was, what are the risks that link with bullying children with special needs? Some risks were suicide ideation, inappropriate behavior, damaged self-esteem, additional disability if during bullying the child were to be further injured. Another question, yes, another reflection is depression, bedwetting, injury to oneself, and that a guidance counselor and a mother actually shared her experience and said that bullying of her already disabled child exacerbated low self-esteem even in adult years. And so it was recommended that teachers and peer counselors reach out to the bullies and let them see how best, how they would feel if the shoe were on the shoe were on the other foot. Yeah. Do you think that bullies are also victims? The response was a unanimous yes. Persons said that these were learned behavior and that it could be a defense mechanism. Signs of bullying were that there were fear of going to school, lack of sleep, nightmares, changes in eating habits, and injuries as well as suicidal ideation. And how should the school administration, teachers, and parents deal with bullying? Well, provision should be made for counseling. There should be community support. Sometimes there's retaliation by parents, and there should be promotion of empathy and awareness of values among children with disability. Do you think mentorship program would be ideal to curb bullying? Yes. And how may the community support support anti-bullying? Everyone should everyone should be able to be on the alert, because sometimes the parents don't see what is happening. And the recommendation for anti-bullying policy is that there should be sanctions. The policy should have teeth, in other words. There should be provisions for counseling of both victims and perpetrator, bearing in mind that some of these perpetrators were also victims. And members of the disabled community, both a parent who is disabled and a child who is disabled, should be at the policy table, as well as a faith-based organization. Thank you so much. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Crawford. And now we have the final group, that is group 4, and they would have looked at positive parenting strategies for handling bullies and victimized children. We have Ms. Ford, who will be leading the charge on behalf of group 4.
Okay, so we look at 5 aspects, and number 1 is, why do they bully? And the answer is a sense of control, superiority, power, and feeling good about yourself as they mask psychological issues. Number 2, what challenges do the families face? And these are parents face discrimination, denial and frustration, and some feel proud. 3, what experiences do the families of bully victims face? And these are feeling attacked by others as they informed. And 4, what should parents do when they learn child involved in bullying? Parents should engage child in counseling, show love, and ensure that they have good mentors. And the last, the 5, would an apology help? An apology could be helpful, and also the bully should ask for forgiveness and show a change in actions and compensate for damage done. As bullies should understand the concepts of making amends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ford. So we would have gone through all 6 groups here and the other 5 online. How are we still on time? We're good? All right. So we're rolling. We have lunch at 1 o'clock. But between then and now, we have the second, no, that's after lunch, sorry. I have some giveaways. So let me see if we have some good students among us. So now, online, according to Dr. Gale, what is the most likely physical profile of the victim of bullying? These are for our online participants. What is the most likely profile of the victim of bullying? And those of you here, Dr. Gale again, he had a phrase. I want you to complete this comment that he made. When you save the life of one bully, you...
Any victims? 100 victims.
You know, in my class, when I used to teach, my hand have to go up first. And because Miss win already, I'm going to ignore Miss. So that young man in the gray, I will acknowledge him first.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, you better get it right, you know.
You save the lives of many victims, 100 victims.
I think it's acceptable. I think we can give him that, don't it? Yes, go ahead and give it to him. Wonderful. Yes. How online questioning going? Gabby, you can help them with the answer for the online. You know, I get nothing to do, you know. It's helping them. So, I can't give it the answer now. I can't speak it out. The question is, according to Dr. Gale, what are the most likely physical features or attributes of the victim of bullying? All right. Those of you here, no, that question was for online. No, I'm sorry, Bright Sparks. No, don't give them the answer. All right. So those of you who were taking notes, Jada and Thierry had mentioned when they were speaking, each of them had a specific factor that influenced them into bullying each other. I would like you to tell me the specific factor for each of them, for both of them. This hand went up first.
All right, for Theory, he said it was more peer pressure that forced him into bullying.
Okay.
And for Jada, she said she had experienced it before, so she now dished it out to those afterwards.
Oh, well, I don't have to tell you, so you're correct. Yeah? Well done. Wonderful. All right. And I'm still on Jada for online. Them ready yet? I have another question online. Jada mentioned 3 things that helped her to overcome bullying. They need to name the 3 of them. What were the 3 things that Jada mentioned helped her to overcome bullying? And the last question for you all here. Let me be clear, my bias. You see the bright people them who don't answer already, me not point on honor. All right? So the bright sparks who already answer question and getting a gift, or are going to get your gifts, I'm not going to call on you. But you can tell somebody so you can get something more than get. Or you can share the gift, right? We're ready online? Well, Bright Sparks Gabriel over here had indicated that she know the answer. Okay. All right. So for those of you here, and you are going to be the judge of these answers, according to Dr. Desai, what are some of the ways in which bullying can be addressed in schools? The first hand is up, the only hand is up. I'm disappointed in you all bright students.
Try.
I thought the hands would have just gone up in droves. The hand go up already, on late.
So she
So,
said,
go
hello
ahead, ma'am.
everyone, afternoon. So she said to assess, first you need to assess the bullying by doing your research, track the bullying, enforce school rules, develop clear rules, listen to all the reports of bullying, intervene consistently. You want more? Take immediate action, body system, educating everyone about bullying, and me no good? Good? Yes,
No, man, she a show off now. Yeah, she a show off now. Eh? Boy, I know, somebody earlier advised you to take copious notes. Eh? You were taking copious notes. Kudos to you. So I have names of some winners here for the first question, but I have two names. It's a tie. They came in at the same time. So my first question was, according to Dr. Gale, what are the most likely to be the physical features, physical profile of the victim of bullying? And just to be clear, he said they're likely to be darker, they're likely to be skinny or overweight, and they're likely to be either too small or too big. Were those the responses? Yeah, that's fine. Wonderful, wonderful. And Opia Smith, first question was Camille Cooks Wright and Tashana Dice Martin were the recipients of those awards, or will be rather, yeah? And the other question online was, what three things helped Jada to overcome being a bully? And those three things were, oh no, can you help me out? Go on now. Lord, this choir out of sync. Come on, ready now? Is mentorship. So it is, come again, last time. It was correctly maturity, counseling, and mentorship. And that, in a nutshell, describes what all adolescents need. Right? Pre-bullying, pre-being bullied, pre-adolescence as well. Yeah? This is an excellent preventative strategy. Pardon me?
It's called MCM.
I didn't hear you. Wanna get a wonderful clap. A round of applause. Yeah?
I was saying it's called MCM.
MCM. I like that. MCM. Fabulous. All right. I think we still have more time to go before lunch, before we break. 2 minutes. There were 2 minutes, we're on time. See? Why we're not typical Jamaicans today. Or are we trendsetters as Jamaicans? Trendsetters. We have set the stage, chat about. So I think we can break for lunch. Yeah? And before we break for lunch, can I invite one of the younger persons to say grace for lunch? I can pick on one of Uno. I have a volunteer. Yes? So you can turn on your mic and lead the charge for grace for lunch.
We thank you, Lord, for this meal. Bless it to our bodies now, in Jesus' name.
Amen. So when we get back, we have more polls to take care of online. Enjoy your lunch. Don't eat too much that you cannot walk back here. All right? You can be rolled. Wonderful. See you in 1 hour. 1 hour is the lunch break.
I'm tired of your foolishness now, you know.
Don't spare the rod and despoil the child. That's a popular mantra in Jamaica, guiding many parents on their parental journey. For decades, corporal punishment has been the go-to way to discipline children when they do something wrong. But most times, this form of discipline isn't effective.
I used to beat him when he was younger, but the more I beat him, the worse he got. Like if I beat him for coming home from school late, he'll come home even later the next day. So I see it wasn't working, so I started talking and encouraging him instead of beating him. Things are working much better. He's less angry. And he listens and he does what he's supposed to do more with this approach, with talking and not beating.
When she's more calm and talk, I'll listen more. I try to do better. Depends on what. And I find it way better than the cursing and the beating. When she curse or beat, I just stop listening overall or stop caring. Yeah, just stop caring.
I think for disciplining or the approach, you can seek help for your child if your child needs help. You seek help, seek counseling, and for example, the Child Protection and Family Services, they were very good when my child wasn't doing the best that he could do, and they will encourage you and tell you how to help your child or children.
Among a parent's greatest fear is having their child fall prey to sexual predators, especially in an environment that is supposed to be safe.
When I left him at home with the adult, there was a 12-year-old girl who lived at the house at the time. So when I went in the room and I said to him, "Why are you crying?" He says to me, I asked him about 2 times and then he started to cry more. And then I said, like, "Mommy, I never want to do it." And, she told me to take off my clothes and, she started taking off my clothes and then she started to, do things to me that I'm not comfortable with. As a parent, as a mother, it's kind of hard. To know that that's your child, and you thought that your child was protected. You're leaving him with an adult and another child. You thought that the child would be okay. You didn't leave him on the street. So it kind of, for me, when that happened, it opened my eyes even more, as to how you need to operate, even in your own surrounding.
Distraught, she turned to the Child Protection and Family Service Agency, CPFSA, for help.
He started having nightmares, and I realized that something was seriously going on with him there. So I went to the CPA, started to get and some help for him, where that's when we started counseling. We started to talk about what went on and how it happened and how he felt. He had become withdrawn. He didn't want to play with his brother anymore. He used to love playing with his baby sister. Like, it become a thing that he just rather stay by himself. Then now, after the counseling, I realized all of that has changed. He started to talk more and he started to ask me questions and stuff like that. I know that he's okay because I have sought the intervention from early, and for 3 years, going through all of that, he's 8 now. It happened when he was 5. 3 years later, it's a total different child.
Over the past 3 decades, there has been an evolution of children's rights in Jamaica and an overhaul of how children are treated and protected. One catalyst which drove the evolution was Jamaica's signing and ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. On November 20, 1989, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Jamaica was among the first group of countries to sign and ratify the convention. Jamaica signed on January 26, 1990. and ratified it on May 14, 1991, which made it binding law in this country. The adoption of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child sparked major legislative and institutional restructuring and consolidation of children's services, resulting in greater focus on child development issues in Jamaica. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child is an international human rights treaty which sets out the civil, political, economic, social, health and cultural rights of children. A child, as defined by the convention, is any human being under the age of 18 years, unless a country's national law says otherwise. The convention deals with child-specific needs and rights. Countries that ratify it are bound by international law and must act in the best interests of the child.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child is the most widely ratified human rights treaties in history. There are only 2 countries that hasn't ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So there's no other human rights treaties that are so widely ratified.
So there has been a lot of efforts and a lot of work put in nationally, both legislatively and within the ecosystem of child care, to protect our children and to acquiesce to the principles of the convention. But I will have to confess that it's a work in progress. But what is important is that we can honestly say that the child in Jamaica has a better opportunity to succeed in 2021 than they did when we signed the convention in 1991.
There are 4 basic principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And you asked me what are the most important one, and then there's no most important one. All of them are equally important, and then if one is missing, no child can really achieve the full child rights. One is non-discrimination. The other one is the best interest of the child. The right to life, survival, development is another one. And children's view to be heard, and then children's right to express their view. Those are the 4 basic principles, guiding principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And then all of them are equally important.
211 is a confidential line dedicated to reporting child abuse. It's easy to remember and accessible 24 hours across all networks. Report all forms of child abuse. Our children are depending on us to protect them. If you see something, make the call. Call 211 and report child abuse.
Between 2015 and 2020, there were 74,455 reports of child abuse in Jamaica, 1,203 reports of sexual abuse, 1,465 reports of physical abuse, 2,528 reports of neglect. Report child abuse. Call 211.
When I found out I was becoming a father, I made myself one promise: to love my youth unconditionally, and I make nothing happen to her. Child abuse in Jamaica is a big problem, and the case them arise. It's time for everyone to speak up. What is right is reporting everything we hear or see. Report all form of child abuse. Just call 211.
When Jamaica ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1991, efforts were undertaken to sensitize the various stakeholders about the way forward where children's rights were concerned, while establishing the legislative and institutional framework that would oversee the redesigning of the process that governs the promotion and protection of children's rights.
The NGOs were the ones who did the public education. They formed the Jamaica Coalition on the Rights of the Child, and they went around the island with public education. But they also did a lot of publications, and along the way it was done with participation. Like when we were doing review of institutions, you had Children's Services Division, Adoption Board, Child Support Unit. And after the strategic review, it was decided to have one agency for child development. So the Child Development Agency was created. And out of our commitment to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the Child Development Agency was created, I think, 2004. Then we have the Children's Registry was created to accept reports on child abuse. Then 2006, the Office of the Children's Advocate was created.
It was very important that all the stakeholders, the main stakeholders like your police officers, your educators, persons working in the health system, your social workers, it was very critical that all of these persons were sensitized and worked towards ensuring. International development partners like UNICEF was critical as well, to provide the broader framework for which the child protection sector could mature to be able to secure the rights of the children.
Many of the professionals who work with children, guidance counselors, medical doctors, policemen, were very, very skeptical as to how the new mandate for reporting would actually be implemented, particularly within a culture where we know the anti-informer culture is very steeped in Jamaican communities. But we've seen over the years that it has brought about a level of commitment from ordinary persons, from persons who work with children, that we really have to deal with child abuse in a very direct and head-on way. So now it is far more likely for persons to call into Child Care and Protection Agency when they come across evidence of children being abused or neglected.
The signing of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, marked a key international agreement which entrenched the survival, protection, developmental and participatory rights of children. When Jamaica signed the convention in 1991, this became the catalyst for major developments in the country's child protection system. This resulted in programming for children, moving from a welfare model to a rights-based one, providing a safe, nurturing and protective environment.
So when we started off, there were multiple agencies that had responsibilities in relation to children. And then we formed, the government formed the Child Development Agency. But with the introduction of the Child Care and Protection Act, we also introduced a Children's Registry as well as the Office of the Children's Advocate. And what that meant was that there were specific entities that Jamaicans could look to for guidance in terms of what do we mean when we say children have rights? How far do those rights go? How do those rights help to curtail government action? And how do we balance the rights of children with parental rights as well as parental responsibilities? So having a specific entity with responsibility for child protection, as well as another entity with a responsibility to provide oversight to the entire government, which is what the Office of the Children's Advocate does, it created a balance within the system. We knew where to go to for issues to do with the protection of children in individual case-by-case basis. But if we want a wider legal perspective on what child rights means for the government of Jamaica as an entire entity, then that's where the Office of the Children's Advocate fit in.
In November 2017, the Child Development Agency and the Office of the Children's Registry merged to form the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, an executive agency of the Government of Jamaica under the remit of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information.
The Child Protection and Family Services Agency has a primary mandate for children who are deemed to be in need of care and protection. And these are children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected, or children who are otherwise at risk. Children who are falling into maladaptive behavior, children who are prone to moral danger based on, the circumstances of where they live and how they interface within the communities, how they are socialized. We provide these services to these children in the several programs that we have at the agency.
Child protection laws, policies and institutions have also evolved since Jamaica's ratification of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. There are now over 20 laws aimed at protecting, safeguarding and promoting the rights of children in Jamaica.
Major piece of legislation that embodies the articles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child is the Child Care and Protection Act, and this was enacted in 2004. Required the government and state actors as well as the general public a responsibility to ensure that the children's rights are protected. So it had prescribed persons primarily whose job take them in contact with children. So you have your educators, teachers, guidance counselors, you have your health professionals, you have your social workers. Those persons who come into direct contact with children because of their professional roles now had a duty to report. You also had the registry where you could make these reports, confidential reports. Fast forward to 2021, we have a 3-digit number, 211. Now that it's much easier for especially children to remember and to call if they see suspect. And this is where it's critical. You don't have to be sure, you don't have to know. See a suspect, you report. And the responsibility now is on the CPFSA and its investigators to investigate.
I think the main achievement as it relates to Jamaica's record in dealing with children is the fact that over the last 3 decades, we have made the country understand that child rights are important. Getting people to understand that children are important and they have rights. And I think on that foundation, you will be able now to expand those rights and enumerate those rights in more specific form, as people are already of the knowledge that the rights exist.
Jamaica's implementation of the principles under the Convention on the Rights of the Child has seen child participation becoming a familiar theme in governance, particularly in the sectors and institutions that work directly with children.
Traditionally, children never had a voice. Children used to be seen and not heard in many cases. We have developed a system in Jamaica where now we have youth advisors, youth advisory council, where young people are advising me, the minister. That's hope. The fact that we're actually having a conversation today about a 30-year-old convention, that's hope. The fact that more and more people are being arrested and put in prison for abusing children, that is hope.
At the CPFSA, we now have the Children's Advisory Panel, and within childcare facilities, we have the Children's Councils, where it's giving them some responsibility. The provisions there allow them to be aware of the rights that they have and the responsibilities, and their voices are heard, not just as a token that you have the council, and they actually do active participation.
An initiative like the CPFSA Children's Advisory Panel is one where kids across the island can participate and definitely have their voice heard in regards to policy and any issues regarding children.
I think to a great extent children are more aware of their rights. You see children taking schools to court because they have a right. They are much more aware of their rights. Adults also are much more aware that children have rights. And so we are doing much better in upholding the rights of children.
During the months of January to June 2021, the Child Protection and Family Services Agency received 1,203 reports of sexual abuse of our children, 1,465 reports of physical abuse, and 2,528 reports of neglect. Report what you see and hear. Stop child abuse. Call 211.
Stop sexual abuse. Stop physical abuse. Stop emotional abuse. Stop child neglect. Report child abuse. Call 211.
Since the start of the year, the National Children's Registry has received over 7,000 reports of child abuse. These include sexual, physical, emotional, and child neglect. It is time to start protecting our children. If you know something isn't right, make that call. Our 24-hour line is completely confidential. Report child abuse. Call 211.
Last week, we looked at the role of the child protection agencies in Jamaica, the rights of children, the status of their mental health, types of abuse, safety in schools, the issue of bullying, and fire safety and prevention in our homes.
Welcome back to our very special discussion program under the theme, Every Child Deserves Protection. Thank you.
Violence remains one of the main barriers to the fulfillment of all rights and can affect every aspect of a child's development, including educational development and health outcomes. Jamaica's high rates of murder and violent crimes lead to traumatized children, particularly when children are themselves the victims of well-publicized crimes.
Jamaican children are exposed to violence from very early age. Around 85% of children are experiencing the violent discipline, that is corporal punishment, as well as shouting or calling names, all those violent discipline. So we have to address that. And then how we address that, of course, we have to change the social norms and behaviors of the people, but we should really legally ban all those harsh punishment and discipline.
As a society, whether it is as parents, as educators, as police officers, or just in the wider community, we need to start thinking that children become what they see. They become what they experience. And the more we expose children to violence, the more we have a standard that says our Jamaican children can only be raised by violence, is the more we produce generation after generation after generation of people who only know to solve their problems by resorting to violence. So one of the main things I think it would be good for people to take away from this is that child rights isn't about producing children who are non-conforming. It's not about producing rebellious children, but it's really about honoring and respecting the humanity and dignity in each child so that we can provide for our children the patterns in terms of who we want them to become for the type of peaceful and loving society that we want to have in future.
The National Plan of Action for an Integrated Response to Children and Violence is one such policy that we are seeking to have a collaborative approach as we seek to tackle the violence against our children. So the goals that are embodied in that policy speaks to the laws, the review of the laws. We are reviewing the Child Care and Protection Act, we are reviewing the Adoption Act, Sexual Offences Act, all of those pieces of legislation. We have the Trafficking in Persons Act, we have the Child Diversion Act. All of these are set in the legal framework and policy framework to treat with that.
30 years after ratifying the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Jamaica has come a far way. But there's still work to be done to ensure that each and every child is protected and enjoys the rights afforded to them under the convention.
Jamaica has made a tremendous progress in many aspects.
We have come a far way, still a little way to go, and the pieces of legislation that have been enacted, if fully implemented, if the agencies, departments are fully resourced, to take on the issues that come to the fore, then we would be on our way to securing the interests and rights of our children.
More and more people are beginning to recognize the significant challenges that exist as it relates to the protection of children. And I think if there's one thing that I'm thankful for, it's that. And I think if we continue to encourage Jamaicans and continue to educate them about what taking care of children really means, what protecting children really means, that the child is the most vulnerable member of society who needs to be protected by everyone in the society. I think if we continue that thrust over the years, you'll see more and more improvements.
So there's a long way to go for many Jamaican children, and we need the commitment of all parties to ensure that the spirit of child rights is felt in every corner of Jamaica.
Undoubtedly, every Jamaican wants to see our children thrive in a country that will nurture them and help them reach their full potential.
My hope is that after 30 years of signing on to the CRC, we've learned a lot, and I hope that going forward we carry those lessons forward and everyone decides to pick up on the CRC as well, because we know that the laws are in place and we know that organizations such as the OCA and the CPFSA are present. However, it's now up to the other stakeholders to now sign on to the CRC, you know, figuratively. So we have our persons in healthcare, we have our persons in the police force, we even have just regular Joes like the transport systems, we have people who just interact with children every day. All those people have to now be aware of the Child Care and Protection Act and be aware of the Convention on the Rights of the Child so that they too can be informed and make informed decisions when interacting with children, because it's up to us to ensure that children are protected, and if we don't know what those children's rights are, then we might be at risk of potentially harming them or potentially not giving them the rights that they deserve. So I think that children across Jamaica definitely do deserve for everyone around them to know that they have rights, and I do encourage children to also look up their rights and to know them so that they can speak out and they can pretty much tell an adult or tell whoever is around them that, hey, I have rights. These are mine. I have been born with these and I deserve to be respected.
Let us all do our part to protect our children and uphold all their rights as outlined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. But remember, with rights also come responsibilities. We must work together to ensure that each and every child is educated about their rights and responsibilities, that they are protected and enjoy the rights afforded to them under the Convention. 30 years on, Jamaica is still implementing policies and programs that will help the country better fulfill its obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. We all have a role to play, so let us do our part to protect our children and uphold their inalienable rights as citizens in Jamaica, land we love.
We call our children bad, rude, and even swear at them. Sometimes we get angry and feel like spanking them with belts, iron, and other implements. Corporal punishment causes childhood aggression and other levels of behavioral problems. No child should be spanked as a means of discipline, so please, beg you, try positive disciplining. Talk to your child. Take away privileges, assign chores. These are some of the ways to positively discipline your child. Let us end corporal punishment.
A message from the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA.
211 is a simple toll-free number. It's easy to remember and it is free to all callers, whether you're calling from Digicel or from Flow. It is operated on a 24-hour basis, So there's no excuse for not reporting child abuse.
No problem, more than happy to assist you.
When a report is made to 211, our officers are well trained to ask some key questions to determine exactly what is happening to the child. When a report is recorded, it is marked with a case identification number, and the officer does an assessment to determine what is happening to the child, 2, the level of urgency, and 3, what entity is best suited to investigate the matter. Our investigating partners include our own internal investigations unit at the CPFSA, the Office of the Children's Advocate, and a number of units within the Jamaica Constabulary Force. At the CPFSA, the cases are assigned to our investigators within 24 hours. They will then go out into the field to do an assessment to verify whether the allegations in the report are true and what actions are needed to respond to the child who is in need of care and protection.
It is confidential.
You can be guaranteed that every call that comes into 211 is treated as secret and confidential.
Positive parenting is a parenting approach that seeks to establish good communication between parent and child. It focuses on having the parent act as a coach, act as a role model to, act as a teacher to the child instead of punishing the child. The parent who wants an immediate fix is not going to get it with positive parenting because it is a process, but it's a process worth engaging in. For the parent who has a child who talks back a lot, for the parent who has a child who refuses to do homework, for a parent who has a child who won't stay in the yard, right? All of those behaviors happen for a reason. That parent is required now to understand what the reasons are. For the parent who has a child that talks back, you need to understand that that behavior is coming because of natural intelligence. The child perhaps is a thinker, okay, and so won't take anything at face value, and so now you need to change your parenting patterns to ensure that as you engage with this child, you give the child an understanding of what it is and why it is that you've asked them to do a particular thing. They are thinkers, and sometimes we beat that down. For the parent who has a child who doesn't do homework, understand why it is that the child doesn't do the homework. Is it because the homework is challenging for the child, they don't understand? Is it that the child is feeling as though they are unable to? Is it that the child doesn't like the teacher? Whatever it is, you need to find out what the cause of the behavior is, and that is how you're going to remedy it. So once you find the cause, let's say the child doesn't quite understand the content, which is why they won't take up the papers in the afternoon, then you need to be able to give that child extra tutorage. Say it's a child who loves to play and hasn't fully understood how to self-regulate and sit down and concentrate. What you now need to engage in is structured play. You need to be able to have an environment where you have the child play and then have the child transition from play to some other activity, and that lasts for a particular period of time, and then from that to another activity, so that they are able to begin to appreciate homework time as opposed to play time. Very important. Instead of getting irate when you do see the child in a defiant situation, your question must be, so why did you do that? What was that about? What made you make that choice? And then the next question is, do you think that choice was the most effective at the time, and why? As you work with your children through this, you have to have them think through their own actions, so that if they're hit with a situation again, they already would have thought through it and know exactly what is the best choice to make.
Welcome back to this very special discussion program under the theme, Every Child Deserves Protection. I'm Dahlia Harris. Our children are faced with many serious issues that they shouldn't have to. Abuse of all types, sexual, verbal, physical, and neglect. There have also been instances of rape, murder, child labor, and trafficking. How do we protect our children? And how do we keep them safe? We've invited stakeholders to have a discussion. So with me are Mrs. Rosalie Gage-Gray, CEO of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, Mrs. Diane Gordon-Harrison, our Children's Advocate, and Dr. Judith Leiber, Director of the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. I want to start, ladies, with the topic of keeping children safe. And Mrs. Gage-Gray, I'm going to begin with you, because the CPFSA's mandate includes protecting children. So I want you to tell us about the work of the agency and its role in the care and protection of our children.
Thank you, Delia. The Child Protection and Family Services Agency is an executive agency under the portfolio of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. And we have primary responsibility for children who are deemed to be in need of care and protection. These are children who have been abused, neglected, abandoned, or otherwise at risk. And we receive reports of cases of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, children not attending school, children not being properly taken care of at home, and we investigate those cases of abuse. Mm-hmm. And so our primary responsibility is to ensure that children who have been abused are properly, interventions are provided for them, and that they are restored to good health, and that families are also restored. So we do a lot of work with families in communities as part of our preventative work, as well as to intervene in circumstances where the children are at risk.
Sounds like a lot. I'm guessing that you collaborate with a number of other agencies.
Number of stakeholders in the child protection sector. We have panelists here who are our main stakeholders as we seek to protect our children right across the country.
Talk to me about your team. Right across the country means that you have representatives in every parish. So whichever community I am in and I feel that a child needs protection, I can find a representative from your agency.
Yes, we do have island-wide coverage. We have offices in all 14 parishes, and our main office is at 48 Duke Street, and our regional office for the Kingston and St. Andrew area is at 40 Duke Street. Yes. And so we have offices in all parishes, and we have investigators that will go into every nook and cranny of Jamaica to rescue a child if we have to. So we have island-wide reach, and we work with other partners on the ground as well as we seek to intervene and rescue our children.
Wonderful. One of the partners you have is the Children's Advocate, and Mrs. Gordon-Harrison, your office is responsible for protecting and enforcing the rights of children and promoting their best interests at all times. Is keeping our children safe one of their rights?
Absolutely. So safety really covers a number of different facets of a child's life. If you look at what the rights are, as outlined in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, you'll find that there are various facets that are interwoven to create safety. So the child, for example, has a right to shelter, a right to life, a right not to be violated in any way, a right not to be exposed to violent situations, and a right to education, health, reasonable care, and a whole host of them, which really goes into making a child feel safe and secure. So being the Commission of Parliament that treats with the protection and enforcement of rights, we do cater to the needs of children. And a child, in keeping with the international definition, is anybody who is under 18 years. Okay. We have a legal team that deals with progressing cases in court, for example, if there's an identifiable breach of a right, or if there is anyone or any institution that acts in a way that negatively impacts the best interests of a child, then we have the facility and the mechanism through which to hold persons accountable so that we're redressing wrongs that occur to children. So yes, we in fact have that particular mandate, and it's something that we do in partnership with a number of the different entities, and including law enforcement.
Right. Who are prescribed persons, and how does your office help to protect the rights of the child to be safe?
All right, so prescribed persons are persons who are designated under the Child Care and Protection Act. But before I answer you specifically about them, I want to make it very clear that the Child Care and Protection Act has really legislated what is a moral right that we all have as a nation to care for our children. So in Section 6 of the legislation, it states very clearly that anybody who has information that suggests that a child is actually being abused, was abused sometime in the past or could be abused in the future, they have a duty to make a report. The law singles out special individuals who are called prescribed persons because of their occupation. And it typically includes persons who have high contact with children because of their jobs, which would be a school teacher, a principal, a hospital administrator, medical practitioners, social workers, coaches, and just anybody who has that high contact, because we recognize that prescribed persons have the opportunity to see a lot more in terms of what's happening with our children. And so they're the eyes of the system, really. Mm-hmm. So we need them to give us the information so that meaningful interventions and responses can be made on behalf of children.
Sometimes we come from a society where people say children should be seen and not heard, Dr. Leiba, and so we often don't know what they're thinking. Can you give us some insight into the status of our children in relation to their mental health and their state of mind?
Thank you, Dela. I'll cite a recent survey, the Global School Health Survey 2017, that showed that the age group 13 to 15 years old, about their risk of suicidal behavior was about 20 to 23%. Now that tells me that they're in a state of emotional distress. They may have some underlying problems, and sometimes it's also a reflection of an emotional or impulsive decision where maybe they got into trouble, a disciplinary crisis at school, or a quarrel with mom or dad or their boyfriend. Okay? But I'd say a lot of our children are in a state of emotional distress.
How does the violence in our society affect the children? Is this a part of the distress that they are also facing constantly?
Yes, it certainly does, from the youngest to the oldest. It causes them to be anxious. They worry. Sometimes they don't sleep for days. They don't feel like eating. They are what we call hypervigilant. So you're always ill at ease, expecting something to happen. And then after a while, it will go away if nothing further happens. Unfortunately, we have a group of children who have been repeatedly exposed to violence. They may have actually witnessed somebody being shot, or maybe they have been held up, or God forbid, raped or something like that. And then they may develop something we call post-traumatic stress disorder, where they're constantly reliving what may have happened to them. Again, they're always tense. And the memory, they have nightmares. So they really have a more serious disorder. It's one of the anxiety disorders, and it needs treatment. And it may also be associated with depression.
Yeah, what you're saying is we really need to safeguard our children.
Yes.
So what are their greatest needs in relation to being safeguarded or feeling that they're safe?
The greatest need of any child is physical safety. Safety from danger, safety from any kind of abuse, particularly physical or sexual abuse. But above and beyond that, we also need emotional safety. What is emotional safety? Being able to trust, to have a trusted caregiver, being able to have confidence in people who are taking care of you, knowing that your views will be respected, you'll be listened to, you won't be criticized and denigrated every day, and that you will be seen as a person in your own right, yes.
And that your rights are understood and respected.
Right.
Mrs. Gagegray, from the reports that have been coming in to your office, what are some of the reasons that you've been seeing, for children who go missing, children who feel that they're being abused? What are some of the reasons?
So we get at the National Children's Registry, which was formerly the Office of the Children's Registry, about 1,200 cases per month of reports of abuse. And of those reports, the most prevalent cases that are reported are neglect. This is where the family or the guardian is not taking adequate care of the child in terms of the rights that they have: right to education, health, right to shelter, food. And so once we get those reports, we do the investigations. And we would say approximately 9% of those will be confirmed as cases as reported.
All right. Now, our children spend a great deal of time at school, and with us in the audience is Mr. Richard Troop. He's Acting Director, Safety and Security in Schools at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Mr. Troop, what's happening in the schools?
Yesterday, we had a focus group discussion with a group of children from the parish of Portland, it's primary level children. And they all mention the fact that when they are at school, that's when they feel safe. Unfortunately, we would have also been seeing, though, emerging trends within our school system that would suggest many children feel very unsafe at school. Some of these trends include bullying and cyberbullying, include children being victims of extortion, children will complain of how teachers speak to them, how teachers interact with them. Children feel very unsafe when they have to travel from home to school. Mm-hmm. The conditions that they are subjected to on our public transport system, this lap-up business. Mm-hmm. And children also feel very stressed at school. They feel stressed because of the heightened issues within homes and communities, the violence between their parents, the household in which they live. Sometimes many of our boys and girls come from very unsafe communities. And when communities are in tension, they bring the tension to school. And so there are those issues that will impact our nation's children. As a Ministry of Education, it would have caused us to recognize that safety and security must be treated as a priority. It is actually one of our strategic priorities of the Ministry of Education. And so we would have looked at a number of policy documents that would provide guidance to our schools. How do schools treat with critical incident? Should not be left up to our principal want to treat it or not treat it. We would have laid out very specific processes to follow. We would have encouraged all of our schools to establish safety and security committees. And this is a multi-stakeholder group. It includes vendors. Some schools include the bus drivers that normally transport children to school and from school, and students themselves. Because truth be told, in order for us to create this safe and enabling environment, all of us have a responsibility. The teachers, the administration, the ancillary staff, and students themselves. And so that's what we have been trying to encourage. The other thing that would be of concern, and I don't know if it's because probably when I was a child we didn't have cell phone and things like that. In the context of cell phone, and nearly every child have a cell phone, the kind of videos that are posted, yes, is a cause for concern. While we would have been able to minimize, especially the group fights at school, they are taking the group fights to the streets, to the bus centers. These are cause for concern. The other thing I'd like to mention too, especially for girls, in recent time we would have been seeing so many of our girls being victims of sexual violence. Mm-hmm. Not only are they molested, but they are also killed. And so you can imagine the trauma on the immediate family. But many persons don't understand too that there is a trauma within the entire school community. Yeah. Girls are afraid to go out, and that cannot be right. And so it speaks to the need for the kind of collective action to try to find the kind of solutions that will be required.
Wow, Mr. Troop, you know, our children really are facing a lot. They're facing a lot at home and in schools. And Keisha Tomlinson is with us as well. She's a clinical psychologist at the CPFSA. And one of the common problems at schools is bullying. So we want to find out from Keisha, how is bullying affecting our children?
Bullying is a serious problem in regard to the safety of our children emotionally. When a child experiences bullying, you find that they don't want to go to school. It affects their self-esteem, and so they might not perform as well as if everything is okay. Now, you also find that they develop anxiety, and they may become depressed. They might end up thinking or entertaining suicidal thoughts. And there have been instances in other countries and where persons who experience bullying end up actually committing suicide. So it's a serious problem that needs to be addressed by all parties, school, home, and everybody need to sit at the table and look at what we can do to prevent or lessen this sort of issue.
Yeah. One of the things I'm hearing from both you, Keisha, and from Mr. Troop is just the way that the home and school are interconnected. Things happen at home, it affects the child at school. Things at school will go back at home. So it's important that all things are balanced everywhere when we are safeguarding our children. So I want to now go to Mrs. Davis Buckle, and she's Chief Fire Prevention Officer with the Jamaica Fire Brigade, because another issue that we have that's a major issue is we've seen too many of our children perishing in fires. What are the statistics, Mrs. Davis Buckle, and why is this happening more and more? The more you hear it, the more you think we wish it would happen less.
Thank you, Delio. The statistics as it relates to children dying in fires. Let's look at last year. January to December last year, we had 9 of our precious souls perishing in fires. And the Jamaica Fire Brigade took this very seriously. We were devastated by it. We went to the planning table and we wondered, what could we do? What can we do to stop this? So we had launched a Make We Fix It campaign. And CPFSA is one of our partners in that venture. And for 2019, as we are now, since January to April, we have too many. Because we have failed because we wanted 0. Yeah. So we have, as we speak, too many. But we are working not to have any more for this year. We are out in the schools, we are out in the communities. We are ramping up our community fire safety efforts because these fires are happening in our communities. So we are going into the communities while we educate the children at school in their career week, the teachers might invite us in and so on. We're not including the parents. Mm-hmm. So our community fire safety will take care of that.
But what are we saying to the parents? What's the message that we're saying to them? Don't leave the candle burning, don't leave, what are we saying?
We're saying all that. But one of the things that we are trying to say to them is, don't leave them unattended. Don't leave them unattended. Educate your child. When you tell a child, no touch a match is there no, who make me not fi touchy? Make me see what would have happened if me touch it. Show them. Don't touch it. This is how we use it. This is why we have a match in the kitchen.
So explain.
Explain. Don't hide it. And don't bully your child. You know, you hear me saying if you touchy. Talk with them. Tell them. We will say to our children, if you happen to feel adventurous and start a fire, don't go hide in the closet, because that is where it happened. They go hide in the closet. When the fire is recognized, it's too late. The entire house is engulfed already. When you do this, ball out, fire, run out. Alert an adult. Someone will come and help. So this is the sort of things that we are going to the community and we are talking about to our parents.
Thank you very much.
Find an adult and leave your child.
Find an adult and make sure the children are not unattended. That's the key. Thank you, Mrs. Davis Buckle. I'm Delia Harris. Thank you so much for joining us. Every child deserves protection.
Every Child Deserves Protection was brought to you by the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, protecting children, empowering families, securing the future.
When I found out I was becoming a father, I made myself one promise: to love my youth unconditionally and to make nothing happen to her. I try my best to live up to that. Child abuse in Jamaica is a big problem and the case them rise. It's time for everyone to speak up. We know right from wrong. What is right is reporting everything we hear or see. Report all form of child abuse. Just call 211.
Last week, we looked at the role of the child protection agencies in Jamaica, the rights of children, the status of their mental health, types of abuse, safety in schools, the issue of bullying, and fire safety and prevention in our homes.
Welcome back to our very special discussion program under the theme, Every Child Deserves Protection. Thank you so much for staying with us. I think our audience wants to come in now with their comments and their questions, so we're going to head to them. There's a young lady that has a question for us.
Okay, so my name is Judith Hall, and I am the co-founder of an organization called WISH Mindset. WISH actually means Woman in Service to Herself Mindset. I concentrate on empowering women and young girls. So my concern is this. Yes, we are trying to help young girls and to prevent them from being kidnapped and from being hurt and have all this kind of stuff happening. But at the same time, there are some things that we aren't examining. For example, misogyny in the music. That factors into it. They don't respect women as much. And so as a result of that, they are at the prey of men who wish to hurt them. I want to ask, though, are we really digging deep enough in terms of how far back we go in terms of solving the problem? Because the parents need to be educated. They really need to be educated, and I feel that if we are just concentrating on the children and the mothers, like the doctor lady said, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, the parents need to be, they're being parents themselves, they're kids themselves, a lot of them. And so if we don't take control of how to educate them about how to treat their daughters and their sons, because some of the mothers are putting the kids out at age 14 and 15 at the mercy of the world, and they are accommodating of the idea that a man can come in and take care of their daughter just because they don't have enough to give them. We need to root that out. And as soon as we root that out, then we can start really, really digging at the heart of the matter. Because home is the primary agency of socialization, and school is supposed to be the second, but apparently school is now usurping that authority. Because no matter how scared they feel, they still feel more safe at school.
Right. So our Children and Family Support Unit, working with agencies like the National Parenting Support Commission, do provide support to parents when the matters are referred to us. And so the support is both in terms of counseling, psychosocial support, and tangible physical support in terms of food. We have had instances where we have provided accommodation in terms of homes being built for families so that the children and the family can stay together. So it's an active parenting program that we do as we seek to keep children in the families, because we believe that the family is the preferred environment to raise a child.
Thank you very much. We have one more question from the floor.
Okay, my question is actually for Mr. Troop. No, I'm a parent, an over-involved parent. No, I heard everything called. No, I appreciate that it was brought up that home and school need to be connected to keep our children safe. I heard the principal, I heard the guidance counselor, even the vendor at the gate was mentioned, but I didn't hear anything about us as parents. What are our rights to be on the safety and security committee? We need to be involved in that at school as well, so we know the procedures, we can pass it on, and also, are the children involved?
So forgive me if I did not mention all the stakeholders on the Safety and Security Committee. But let it be understood, though, that parents are important stakeholders to every single school. And so your voice is certainly needed on the Safety and Security Committee. As a matter of fact, it's important that schools understand how resourceful parents are. And I'm not just talking financial, but the kind of technical skills and experiences that they can bring to the process and to the conversation. We do, however, encourage persons who are stakeholder representative to the group to understand that they also have a responsibility to communicate the information or the issues back to the constituents they represent, so that it is not a one-person view, but a view that is reflecting the PTA body. But absolutely, ma'am, you parents are certainly encouraged to be a part of not just the committee. As a matter of fact, we always suggest that parents have a responsibility to hold school accountable for standards. And so if you see things are not going right, and I'm not just saying to complain, but to say, how do we sit and fix a problem? Because it is your child in the school, right? And so you have a vested interest to ensure that that enabling environment is there for your child and all our children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Troop. We have another question. That's all right.
So my name is Charmony Kynes. I represent the Jamaica Youth Advocacy Network. Now, my issue rather is, does the law encourages teenage pregnancy? Because the Convention of the Rights of the Child mentions that a child is anyone under the age of 18, am I correct? Right, and our law says that a child can consent to sex at the age of 16. So we are seeing where children are having children. And could that possibly be a cause of the emotional distress that you guys mentioned? So while we try to decline teenage pregnancy, our law says something completely different.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Delia, I love that question, by the way. Yes, because it's funny you mention it. So we had a very good opportunity, I think, because we reviewed 4 pieces of legislation that deal with the most vulnerable in society. One of which was the Sexual Offences Act, which deals with the age of consent. Now, you may or may not remember, because of a number of articles in the media and also excerpts from the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, that I made very extensive submissions that the age of consent should be unified with the age of majority and have everything at 18. Right? So I am firmly of the view, my thing is, having a child is a life-changing experience. It comes with fresh responsibilities. It comes with unexpected challenges. It comes with emotional, not necessarily stress if you're prepared, but it comes with an emotional dimension that calls upon you to be very responsible, because you're now not only giving life, but you're responsible for nurturing and rearing and providing and so on. And so if you are not mature enough, you're not yet fully developed, as a teenager is not, then it means that you're not fully prepared for motherhood. And the problem is even more compounded when you're not in a committed relationship. And so the support systems that you would need to make you more effective are absent. And Dr. Simpson can tell you, your own life is interrupted. And so while we have a built-in institutional response now through the Women's Center and other NGOs, who are assisting, my firm view is that with the best will in the world, you will reach some girls, you will not reach all. And so those who are really struggling emotionally may harbor feelings of resentment towards their own children, may have feelings of, why did this have to happen to me? So they can't give of themselves. And it really is going to what is perhaps a part of the root of the problem. You mentioned it. If children are having children and they're not fully prepared, how can they bring to fruition an adult who is ultimately going to contribute fully to nation building?
Thank you for that response, Dangon Harrison. And thank you for raising the issue of our missing children, because after the break, that's something that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to have a look at the Ananda Alert System. Very important, so please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Every Child Deserves Protection was brought to you by the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, protecting children, empowering families, securing the future.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome back, everybody, those here with us at the Jamaica Conference Center, as well as those who are joining us in cyberspace online. This has been a very informative and engaging session thus far. One kind word and action. The second in the series of CPFSA's anti-bullying workshop. Victims to systems, consequences to bullying and cyberbullying. Once again, welcome to the final session of today, the second in our series that targets and aims to minimize, and I dare say wipe out, bullying and its effects. Before we go into the next session, I want to remind you all that with the second poll is actually up and will be up for another hour, and that second poll is with regards to knowledgeable administrators. Another reminder for those who are in our space here, the QR code should be in your folders. Please access your folders so you can do the poll online. So my time here with you after lunch is going to be very, very limited. I am going to hand over to Ms. Anna Roberts, and she'll be moderating the next session that aims to focus on amplifying silent voices. It aims to be an even more engaging session, and trust me, you will enjoy it. So I'm going to invite Ms. Roberts to come and lead the way. Let's welcome Ms. Roberts.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing after lunch? Good, tired, want sleep, but I hope at least our belly is full. All right. So we are continuing the discussion on bullying. We are now at session 2, and you can see the title of this discussion will be on amplifying silent voices. So as the title of the session suggests, it's continuing the discussion on bullying, as I mentioned, but we know that a lot of times bullying comes with a silent nature. A lot of times persons don't speak about what is happening, and there are some populations of children that are more vulnerable, and their voices are at times easily lost because they're unable to speak up for themselves, or persons are not willing to listen. But so I have 3 panelists that will carry us through that discussion, and I just want to invite them all to the stage. We have Mrs. Jacqueline Bennett. You can just come to the stage now. I will share the profiles afterwards. So we have Mrs. Jacqueline Bennett. We also have Dr. Judith Leiber, as well as Dr. Jessica Fomi Simpson. Let's give them a round of applause and welcome them. You're welcome. All right, so while they make their way here, so Mrs. Jacqueline Bennett, she is a senior social worker with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. She is married and has 2 wonderful children. She has a master's degree in special education and has been working with persons that have disabilities for over 12 years. She is also a volunteer for the Special Olympics. All right, and next to her, we have Dr. Judith Leiber. She is the Director of Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit at the Ministry of Health and Wellness, where she has served for more than 10 years. She has also served at the Child Guidance Clinic, and she has over 15 years of extensive collaboration with CPFSA and the development of the mental health bus. So Dr. Leiber has also been integral in the introduction of the school mental health literacy program across high schools in Jamaica. And thirdly, to my far left, we have Dr. Jessica Fomi Simpson. Did I say it correctly? Yes, thank you. Yes, Dr. Simpson. She is a clinical psychologist trained at the University of the West Indies, Mona. She is uniquely gifted to engage children and youth, but at the same time, diverse enough to serve adults in a very meaningful way. She has worked in the field conducting psychological assessments for adults and children and providing therapy to many. She has special interests and skills in trauma and healing, child development, and parenting. She's currently at Children's First Agency and serves various vulnerable populations, inclusive of children and the adults who they interact with. So the agency, that's Children's First, they started engaging various stakeholders in anti-bullying efforts in 2019, and for the past 2 years have been using our social media campaign, the I Am Human campaign, to reach even more people. Mrs. Simpson is a firm believer in living with intention and helping persons become their best selves. And psychology and its many possibilities is the main vehicle that she uses to encourage change in everyone that she meets. Let's welcome Dr. Simpson. All right, so the same procedure as this morning, each panelist will have 10 minutes to share their presentation, and then afterwards we will have a 30-minute segment of question and answers. So we will have them in the same order. So I will begin with Mrs. Jacqueline Bennett, who is from the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Members of the Ed table, good afternoon. Mike? And well, it's okay now? Okay, good afternoon again. Members of the Ed table and members of our audience. You can just bear with me a little today as we cruise and journey through this little presentation, right? So, as our moderator explained to you, that I am from Jamaica Council for Persons with Disability, and I think I have a pretty years of experience working in the field of disability, both with children and with adults. All right, so for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to be looking at children with disability, anti-bullying for children with disability. But first, we want to look at the definition, what they, Okay, so what is a disability? A disability is a person with disability which include persons who has long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairment which may hinder his or her effective participation in the society on an equal basis with others. And this definition comes from the Disability Act 2014, where it looked at everybody, so including children. They have the same rights as persons in a society, right? All right, so children with disability are one of the most marginalized, excluded in a lot of the activities. And you can look at even something as simple as church. When a child goes to church with a disability, a lot of times, whether I want to agree to it or not agree, but I have experienced it, is that sometimes because based on the nature of the disability, they might experience some kind of uncomfortableness or whatever it is. And a lot of times we find that the teachers don't have the time for them in the activity. And I remember growing up as a child in Sunday school, at this time of the year, you would have Christmas program. And because sometimes for them to learn the different part, they would just either put them aside or they don't participate none at all, right? So what the act is saying that they should, right? They also experience a lot of silent violence within the home, within the community, and at school amongst their peers, right? So we look at definition and discrimination, right? The discrimination that children with disability experience somewhat is different from the regular child. And sometimes because the child has a speech impairment, or sometimes because of the bullying, the persons who are doing the bullying, they are not able to explain what is happening to them. And you find that they go on in the school and be disruptive And a lot of times, person will say, oh, because them have a disability, them can't this, them can't learn, they can't do anything. And that creates some kind of hidden emotional. I must say that also, who are we talking to? The persons with disability. We're talking about persons who are blind, persons who are, children who are blind, children with intellectual disability, children with physical disability. But over the years, what I have found out is that a lot of times the bullying takes care of the ones with the hidden disability, and that would fall under the ones with intellectual disability, right? Because it's a disability, it is hidden, they look okay. But sometimes because of their reasoning level, because it affects their reasoning level, they are not able to explain what is carried out to them. And so they keep going along and not able to express the offense that is carried out against them. Too often, children with disability are defined and judged by what they lack rather than what they have and what they can do. So a lot of times we say, no, they can't do it because the child uses a wheelchair, the child can't speak properly. I must tell you this too. Recently, quite recently, we have a church service going on, and we nominated a child to read the Bible. And because her speech is not as fluently as ours, they declined not to use her, right? But the person have the ability to do it. And that's part of silencing the individual, right? So, and that can manifest, because as you have been discussing all morning, that bullying comes from various aspects, right? And that could be considered as one, silencing the individual, right? So they are there, invisible, vulnerable, right? So it affects their dignity as well, right? So it's not only adults who being discriminated, it affects. It also look at them self-respect as a child growing up, right? And even their rights as itself. So the fact that the rights are there, children with disability fall under the UN Convention on the Rights of Children. So we're going to get that right, the section, right? It says that basic human rights that every child under the ages 18 has the right to protection from harmful influence, abuse, and exploitation, right? So even it's captured under UN Convention on the right. It says state parties shall take the necessary measures to ensure that full enjoyment by children with disability of all human rights and fundamental freedom and on equal basis with other children. So you don't have one set of rights that is for set of children and another set for children with disability. They all must enjoy living in the society and make their meaningful contribution, right? All right, so have another presentation. Right. So I just wanted to get that to say that our children with, and I said our children with intellectual disability or any other disability have just the same right. They have been violated sexual rights, and just about naming it. One of the things that I found coming out is that in Jamaica, whatever happened to the child, right? In terms of the documentation, we don't collect. What I get to understand is that the data being collected, but it is lumped. So you really cannot go in to say, okay, who are the children that have been bullied by sexual predators or physical disability, because all of the data have been lumped, and so therefore you're not really able to define and to say what are the groups who mostly get abused or which part of the group, because with disability there are 5 types, 5 grouping, right? So we have deaf, intellectual, physical, mental illness, and persons with sensory. All right, so let us look at this video now. All right, so I would not, this is asking you what is bullied, and we thought about what is bullied, and I wouldn't get it for the purpose of the time. I would not go through the same definition, right? You can make that, a little, I can't see the slide. Make it a little brighter, larger. Yeah. That one. All right. All right, so I'll look. So 82% of children with learning disability are bullied, and 79% are scared to go out because they are frightened and might be bullied. So a lot of, as I mentioned earlier on, that a lot of our children, because when they go out, because their face might be disfigured, they might walk with a limp, or there's something there. They don't want to go out in a society because they are bullied. And I must tell you that real experience is when you go by sometimes on the transportation system, right? You sometimes will see they're in the transport station, and other children from different schools will abuse them, call them name, and do other things. If they're using a wheelchair, sometimes persons will just push the wheelchair and push them aside and put them one side. So you find that a lot of children who have a disability want to stay home most of the time. They really don't want to go out because of what society offers to them. And not only by their peers, but as adults as well, have abused these children, right? Children with disability are chronic disease too, because we have children with diseases as well, separate from a part of disability, who might wear different aid to assist them throughout the day, coming from school. And you find that sometimes when they're out there, the taxi men don't want to carry them. It takes for them to get onto the bus is an issue, right? So you find that a lot of times they either wait till the crowd go off and then they go by themselves, or you find some of them will, depend on where the school is located or where they're coming from, they will walk, right? So learners with disability are disproportionately affected by bullying at all ages and in all learning settings, with serious negative impact on their education. And this, because of the bullying, it affects how they learn. It affects how they socialize, right? Because, all right, I still have 1 minute left. Oh, there's a video. You can just, all right. So there's a little video here will tell you about not only in Jamaica aspect, but what is happening globally out there. So you can just pay a little attention. It's not opening. Okay.
Ugly, idiot, spastic, fool,
retards, cripple,
slow,
one leg,
fat.
Bullying hurts and humiliates. 1 in 2 children in England worry about school bullying. Students who are seen as different are the ones most likely to be bullied. Recent research has revealed that at age 7, children with disabilities are more likely to be bullied all the time by their classmates. Children with special educational needs are also twice as likely to be bullied compared to those with no known disabilities. At age 15, young people with disabilities are at a higher risk of being excluded from friendship groups and experiencing cyberbullying, with classmates sharing embarrassing photos and spreading rumors on Facebook or Twitter. Students with special educational needs face the same risk. They are also more likely to be threatened or suffer physical violence. Children and young people who are bullied end up feeling isolated and alone. They are more likely to skip class, run away from home, and self-harm. The scars of bullying stigma can last for a lifetime. Victims face a higher risk of being depressed in adulthood and of faring worse in the labour market. Many victims don't speak about their experiences. It doesn't have to be that way. Nobody should put up with bullying. We might all be different, but deserve to all be treated equally. Whether you face or witness bullying, reach out and make a noise. Share this video and help put an end to bullying.
Okay, so that little video basically summarized everything that what I'd said earlier on, that our children, because of the bullying, they do not want to be out in the public. They have lost friends because of bullying. And it becomes a health issue for some children as well. So one of the ways we can, also I must say this too, because we're going technology-wise, we find that our children always and will use technology, so they'll be on Facebook, Twitter, and all of that. But one of the ways we can do now to assist our children with intellectual, children with disability, is that we need to educate them, the person themselves with the disability, and also educate the public as to what are the effects that when children are bullied, especially in particular children with disability, how it affects them negatively and severely, rather than sweep it under the carpet and not allowing them to participate in whatever activity, for us to understand that they are hurting too in a silent way. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bennett. I hope we were listening, and as usual, we were taking our notes. All right, so our next speaker is Dr. Laiba. She's our child psychiatrist from the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this well-needed seminar. So I entitled my talk, Bullying, Cyberbullying, Mental Health, and Bullycide. And bullycide is, oh, sorry. I'm supposed to point at this? This? Okay. So what is bullycide? It's a rather new term, to be frank with you. Whoever asked me to speak, when they said to me bullycide, that's the first time I was hearing it. But of course, you know, you can surmise what it meant, right? So it's related to bullying. It has received significant attention in recent years. And to put it simply, it occurs when incidents of bullying become so intolerable that the victim ultimately commits suicide by taking his or her own life. And we've had very sad examples of that, mainly abroad, but it still occurs. We know what bullying is about. Sorry, I must point to this. No, that, okay. All right, so we know what bullying is about. And the truth about school bullying, now these are American, but I'm sure it applies here. More than 80% of bullying acts are not reported to adults. And I think the reason is that our children who are bullied feel shame. They feel that they should be able to handle it. They feel that perhaps they're bothering their parents needlessly, and they're not man enough to stand up or woman enough to stand up to the bully. So that is a myth that we have to dispel. It's been said before, I'll say it again, bullying is not something that we should ignore. And then more than 70% of them saying that bullying is a problem at their school. As you see here, it mentioned about persons with learning disabilities, as the presenter before me said. Okay, it's kind of hard, okay. Cyberbullying. In our small group, the question came up, why is it that kids seem to be more reticent about sharing about cyberbullying than about actual bullying? And my postulate is that usually when they get into trouble, so to speak, with cyberbullying, it's because they have broken a rule. You know, maybe they should not have gone on the site, or they went on the site after 11 o'clock. Some of the research showed that a lot of kids who were cyberbullying, they were on sites after 11 o'clock. So they've broken a rule, so they're afraid to tell their parents because they've committed two infractions. They've broken the rule in terms of the limits that they have around media thing, and two, now they're in trouble. So again, you know, we just have to, and I mean, I've been listening all day. The underscoring, the fact we want to underscore is that we all want to keep our children safe, so that even if they've committed two infractions, they feel comfortable enough to come and tell us, all right? So that is something that we also have to keep in mind, especially when we see our children behaving in ways that we can't quite understand. There's nothing on the surface that would point to a reason, but it is hidden. And as I said, cyberbullying is definitely something that we have to keep in mind. Somebody mentioned this before, that bullies there's a likelihood, 4-time likelihood to be convicted of crimes by age 24. This is American statistics. It accounts for 4,400 deaths. 14% of high school students who have been bullied, so they have considered suicide, and actually 7% have attempted. Our latest statistics on suicidal ideation and suicidal risk behavior in Jamaica, it's a bit dated, but we feel it still applies, gives us a 20% suicidal risk behavior. So it's a 20% of our children, and this is mainly high school children, are at risk of committing some kind of maybe suicidal attempt. As you saw in the video, it's a sign of emotional distress. In those studies, we did not really glean or distill out how much was due to bullying. But the research shows that attempted suicide, the two main factors involved are child maltreatment and bullying. So it definitely contributes quite a lot. Okay, so we know the warning signs. I will not belabor that. Now, I wanted to say something about, all right, mental health and, 5 minutes, that's fine. Mental health and bullying. It's a bi-directional relationship. So children who have mental health challenges may sometimes be bullied because of their mental health challenges. In fact, one of these slides shows, makes a comment where a young lady says that she's a cutter, and everybody in our class knew that she was a cutter, and she was bullied because of that. So a mental disorder can create bullying, and then on the flip side, because you're bullied, you may then develop a mental disorder. Okay, all right. And this just speaks about bullying wearing down your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and it leaves you feeling very isolated. And because you feel isolated, you don't reach out for help. And that happens also with depressed people. They feel isolated, they withdraw. So instead of reaching out for the support and help that they should reach out for, they don't. So, you know, there are some glaring similarities there. Okay. And just to underscore again the impact of bullying on mental health, suicidal thoughts, self-esteem. I had this true or false, but I will not go through it. If you had a pre and post test, we could do it, but another time. All right. I'm going to go straight now to the fact that, as I said, youth suicide, it's contributed a lot by by bullying. And I think I went to, oh gosh, what did I do? What am I doing? I'm doing something different. Okay. An important point that I wanted to make was that, in the US, thank God we don't have that in Jamaica as yet. A lot of 12 out of 15 of the school shooting cases in the 1990s, the shooters had a history of being bullied. Okay, and that kind of connects with what Dr. Gale was saying in terms of really looking out for the kids who are being bullied and trying to really help them, because we can imagine, you know, how much death and sorrow would have been avoided had we been able to reach out to those folks who are the kids who are being bullied. Okay, and I mentioned about the youth suicide. Okay, I want to mention cyberbullying because it seems to be have a stronger association with suicide. And again, we can surmise that cyberbullying, because our online presence, because our online presence is so important, particularly to children, that you read stories about these children who they move from the West Coast to the East Coast, and they're still being cyberbullied, and they end up killing themselves. So cyberbullying can be very pervasive and very pernicious, and really result in a lot of grief. All right, so how can we make how can we make those silent voices heard? So we have a number of helplines. We have the Ministry of Health, Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Helpline, 888 New Life, and then we have the Victim Services Division has their helpline. The Office of the Children's Advocate has started a helpline, Safe Spot for Children, and we see all the other different helplines here. And basically what we have recognized is that children sometimes are at a point of extreme stress and distress, and if they do not get the help they need or the support they need immediately, they may do something very impulsive, which turns out to be lethal. So we have provided these means for them to really be able to seek help. So these helplines are very important for our children to know. It's anonymous. There's also, we haven't started You Matter yet, but UNICEF has a You Matter text line. So we have a number of avenues for children when they feel like they're maybe reaching to the breaking point or they need somebody to talk to. Help is at the tip of their fingers. I want to mention the Teen Hub, which is in the Halfway Tree Transport Center. Again, it's a kind of youth empowering center, not the traditional clinic center where they might get stigma. And we've actually found that a lot of deaf children really go there for solace because otherwise they may encounter bullying or they just feel safe there, which is great. And of course, our child guidance services are always there. We know that there might be a wait for the appointment. We try to triage so that if somebody is suicidal, we see them more urgently than at other times. But I think the most important thing for me today is to tell all our folks and for us to tell our children about the helplines, which for the most part, a lot of them are toll-free. They're at your fingertip, and when you really feel like, if you feel distressed, particularly if you feel like you're at the end of your tether, please reach out to get support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leiber. So we just heard the discussion, and we learned a new word, bullycide, and the connection between bullying and suicide, and some of the different psychological effects, and the connection to violence and aggressive behavior, and so on. So I now welcome my third expert panelist, and that is Dr. Simpson, who is the clinical psychologist at Children's First Agency.
Good morning. Right, so I learned from a presenter a few months ago that when you have a group after lunch and you come up and say good afternoon, you just reinforce that niggeritis, and I am not about that life. So, good morning, everyone. All right, I'm still saying the afternoon, but it is well. All right, so as you heard, I'm from the Children First Agency. Where I'm from in the Kingston area, we say we're the Bashibus crew. What I mean is everything we do with a little bit of excitement. Yes, which means we don't do the boring thing, and so all of you who are falling asleep, you will have to wake up now. I apologize. When you go home, you may take a nap. Okay? Wonderful. All right, so we're looking at amplifying silent voices. Now, Children First Agency employs a participatory and a creative approach to addressing issues, bullying included, that our children face, but over our 25 years, we've come to understand that speaking to just children and working with just children is not sufficient to address the issues they have. You have to speak with the parents, the teachers, the social work, everybody who interacts with them, the community members, the vendor who's selling them the sweetie. You have to interact with everybody if you want to make meaningful impacts, yes? And so our edutainment, so we say it's edutainment, which is really education through entertainment. And so when we bring young people to a session like this, while this works for us who are a little bit more mature, for the children, for the youth, they want to hear anti-bullying. The message we bring, calling all stakeholders, give a voice, that them want to hear. Them hear that, their ears perk up. They get in the message, but in a way that speaks to them. Edutainment. We also understand that the persons who we're trying to reach need to have a seat at the table. And so we will not take on any initiative at Children First without speaking to the people affected. And so if we're talking about children who are being bullied, then we need bullies and children who are being bullied to have a seat at the table, because the conversation has more to do with them than us. And they are the ones having the experience, not us, and so they have insight that we don't. And so if we're going to amplify the voices, the silent voices, we have to understand that these silent voices have a seat at the table, whether they are verbal or nonverbal, because no matter what it is, most of them can communicate. All of them, I believe, can communicate, just not verbally. Yes? And so we have to expand the way we think as stakeholders to understand that our children that are living with disabilities, they have a place to express what is happening to them. And we have to open not just our ears, but our eyes to see the experiences that they are having and come up with solutions that address this. Now, at the agency, we started our anti-bullying project in 2019, as you would have heard. And part of this came on the heels of a study done by UNICEF in 2015. And CDA, well then CDA, also released a study, and it was saying 60 to 65% of our students experience bullying. Then COVID came, and in 2020, CDA released that, hey, cyberbullying has gone through the roof. And naturally, as an agency whose mandate is children, we were concerned. What on earth are we going to do? We can't just have them bullying each other. We cannot have rates of depression, suicide, ideations, anxiety just increasing. Parents don't know what to do. Teachers are confused. Everybody is flustered. What do we do? And so we do what we do best. We talk, we chat. We call people and we say, come, make us don't and figure out what is happening. And so we had a bunch of workshops. We had sensitization sessions. We had online discussions just to figure out what was happening. And you know what we came up with? We decided that not only do we want to provide general information and tips on bullying, but we wanted to provide an opportunity for stakeholders to create action plans to help their specific organizations. What do I mean by this? So for example, we called CPFSA. I would say, CPFSA, you run some homes. Call some of the people who run your homes. Let's talk to them. There's bullying happening in the state homes. So actually, in 2020, their study said that there was a 17% increase, well, not 17%, a 17 reported case of increase in bullying in homes, state care facilities. Bullying was increasing then. And so we had to involve them. And what happened is they could then come up and create action plans for their home, for their school, for their community, for their organization, because while general plans are beneficial, the specific ones are what we need. People need to be able to say, well, this is what is happening in my space, and so this is what will work for my space. And while we think that we're pretty intelligent people at the Children First Agency, we also know that we don't know everything, and we're not going to pretend. And so we are going to try to see how can you share with us the challenges that you are having, and then how can we together come up with solutions to address this. Now, if we're going to speak to amplifying silent voices, I want us to understand that not being able to communicate verbally does not exempt someone from the effects of bullying. And so just because I cannot say to you that I'm being bullied doesn't mean I'm not going to get depressed. It doesn't mean I'm not going to withdraw. You just may not know why I'm withdrawing. And if we don't understand that we need to observe as caregivers, we won't be able to make the change that we need to. Now, I want to also mention that systems, we complain about the system so much. I complain about the system. Anybody here complain about the system? The system is flawed. The system has failed our children. Anybody? I can't be alone. Yes? We complain about the system, don't it? Yeah. Guess what? It's you and I who make up the system. The system is not this abstract concept that exists out there in Neverland. It's people who make up the system. And until you and I decide that we are going to change and we're going to force the other people who make up the system to change, we'll always complain about the system. We are the system. We are the change. And we got to involve the persons who are involved. Okay? Okay? All right. Now, finally, from our conversations, we started an online campaign called I Am Human. Because here's what we found out about anti-bullying. Well, not anti-bullying, about bullying. Bullying comes from an imbalance of power, whether real or perceived. And a lot of times, this imbalance comes from real or perceived difference. Because you are different from me in this way, it must mean I'm better than you, and something is wrong with you. And if something is wrong with you, I'm going to pick on you about it. That's how that works. And so we wanted the message to come back to, it does not matter what is different about you. It doesn't matter how we are not alike. The fact is, at baseline, I am human. And so we had persons from different populations come and share their experiences about just discrimination, about bullying, about all the things that they've experienced, how it affected them. Persons spent years in therapy trying to address bullying that they experienced. Some not still fully recovered. Because again, bullying causes deep-seated psychological issues that we cannot just address in one go. And so phase 2 of the I Am Human campaign is actually coming up shortly, so you can look out for that. You can also just search a hashtag on YouTube or on Instagram, TikTok if you have it. Some young people are here. You might have TikTok. Some older ones are on TikTok too. You know, have fun. No judgments here. But I want to encourage everyone that whether the voices are silent or amplified, everyone is human, and we have to treat everyone accordingly. So that's the end. But before I go, I just want to make a correction that I wanted to make at the start and forgot. I appreciate the CPFSA's prophecy into my life, but I am not yet Dr. Simpson. It is currently Mrs. Simpson. But hey, I will take the prophecy and follow and get through my PhD. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Dr. to be Simpson. All right, so we have heard from all our panelists. So now I open up the floor to any questions. Sorry about that. You hear me better now? All right. Opening up to any questions. Do we have any in the room? Any in Cyberland just yet? All right, so while we wait, I will just kick us off with one question, and this is for Mrs. Bennett. So easy question. You mentioned that sometimes children with disabilities, they are victimized in different ways, or they're bullied in different ways. And you shared an example, for example, a child in a wheelchair, their wheelchair being pushed out of the way. Can you share some more on some of the specific ways that children with disabilities are bullied that may not apply to children that are able-bodied?
Okay, thanks for the question. Specific ways. Participating in a forum, an event, and because of the nature of the disability and you see, the thing about it, when you are engaging persons with disability, it's a little uniqueness because you'd have to ensure that the venue, wherever you're inviting the person who uses wheelchair, it has to be accessible from top to bottom, right? Say, for instance, coming here, the bathroom should be, because we're talking about, we want to uphold the dignity and pride of persons with disability and students, right? And so therefore, you would now have to plan for that population so that they come to the venue and they can participate, right? So it can be seen as being bullying, because if you don't have these amenities in place, then they are not able to. And then they would want to, but because they use a wheelchair, because they're using an aid or whatever aid, they're not able to, because the system, as my colleague mentioned, did not prepare them to participate.
All right, thank you so much. I see one question from the audience.
It's actually a comment. It's reiterating one of the points, I'm trying to remember who did. It said cyberbullying is ongoing, and this is because it's there 24/7. So back then, before this explosion of the cyber world, you would have a respite. You kind of have your bully during the day, you jump on your bus, or you go home, and you had that respite. And why I brought this up is that I've had a presentation before, and the comment that was made is that the pit them nowadays is too soft. And you know, when we got to school, we used to do this and we had that. But the fact is, when we got home, because I can say I was a victim of bullying, but I didn't know it was, as I said, I didn't know it was bullying. I just thought this girl just don't like me, and yeah, eventually a stop was put to it. But I would have gone home. I would have gone under my tree, and I forgot about her until Lord when I had to go back to school. But unlike now, it's 24/7. You could have moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. It is there. Once you have access, the vehicle of cyberbullying is the internet, and the internet never goes away. It never turns off. So even if you move school, move house, once you're using the internet, it is going to be there. So people now need to also understand that's not the children are being soft now. It's not that they're being entitled now. It is that this thing is there, this monster is there in front of them. There is no respite anymore. There is no rest anymore. And so we have to look at how do we fix this vehicle in such a way that it is not just harming, but empowering them. So focusing on, like for example, my office speak about programming, this is for the younger one, programming their devices for their age group. We also speak about having openness. So let's say, because a lot of people don't know that all the different social media has an age limit. But we open it up to our children because it acts as their babysitters. And then we're opening also those doors to these type of things. A lot of persons who are even bullying, they don't even know you. They might see one picture of you and maybe your mannerism say, oh yes, this is the perfect candidate. But as you said, open the door, empowering them in such a way that even though it's 24/7, they know where to go, who to go to, and how to deal with it. Of course, always, I commend the person who says educate. Because as I said, going to primary school, I did not know it was bullying. I just saw this girl who was towering and just did, you know, I didn't understand it was bullying until later on in life. So just remember that cyberbullying is 24/7, and so the children are not being spoiled. They are not being entitled. It is that they're not getting the rest that we got when we were going to school.
Yes, thank you. I see Mrs. Bennett also wants to comment.
Okay, just want to comment on it. So if you're, and you're speaking of regular children, so you can just imagine those with intellectual disability. It is even more so. And because sometimes persons see them as the weakest link, right? I have, and why I can tell you, because I work with Special Olympics volunteer, and you see them coming in, and sometimes you right away you know that something is not going on, right? Because they're not able to express how they're feeling, and sometimes it takes a little while for them to warm up to you, and then they can now actually tell you what is happening. And sometimes they're afraid because sometimes the persons who bullying them will now threaten them and tell them whatever, and they're not knowing. So I think one of the ways to go is public education campaign.
I agree.
And also to teach the individuals that their rights, that they should not be bullied. They have a right to be here.
And having strong support as well.
Right, and just like the policy, because we have a number of policy in Jamaica, we now have to ensure that our children know the policy and that they have a right, and they should not be bullied.
Yes. Again. And as I said, the support as well. When they see that these children have support, it's a different thing. My stepmother was behind my sister. Like, even now, she's 20 odd, and my stepmother is always behind her. Not that she's, mommering or whatever they call it, but she was always there. And so her instances of bullying was very limited, but it was there, but it was very limited because my stepmother was on top of it. So the support is needed. It is needed. So we need to talk to those persons who are behind these children to let them know, listen, they need to see you some more, know that there is a mommy or a daddy or somebody behind them.
All right, thank you so much. I have a question here, and then that way.
Oh, I just have a comment. I definitely agree with the support. Listen, when I was younger, nobody could mess with me because I was going to go home and tell my mom. And the day that Marilyn Clark comes down to the school, everybody's in trouble. And so that, knowing that my mom was always, I'm telling you, my mother would teleport from work to school just for me, and knowing that she was always going to be able to do that. Of course, I didn't manipulate that special circumstance, but knowing that she always had my back and she was always there to defend me made me more willing to report situations that I knew was wrong. And that's why I encourage my sister, because she has a learning disability. She's of special needs. She's autistic, and that's why I always tell her, you make sure you tell me if anybody trouble you, because me and them, when me reach the school, that's just how it is. And I need her to know that regardless of her situation and her condition, she has the right to tell me, and me have the right to go down to the school and talk to whosoever I need to talk to. And guess what? She knows it's gonna get dealt with, because she understands that she's valuable and she deserves to be, I guess, treated as valuable as she is, right? Exactly, and as equal as everyone else. Also, for parents especially, because cyberbullying, technically, it's a unique case of bullying, because we live in an age of technology right now, and our parents, who are a lot older than us, they don't really understand what's going on. Frankly, half of my age of parents just discovered what Facebook is, and I have to be like, Facebook is this and this, and Instagram is, anyways. But I think it's important for parents, especially in Jamaica, to have a bit of empathy and sympathy towards children who are going through cyberbullying, because it's not as easy as just turning off the phone and ignoring it, or just lock off the phone and it's not trouble, it's not real, and social media. No, it's very real, because exactly, you internalize everything that's being said about you, the pictures being posted, and it consumes your mind and your everyday life, which is why cyberbullying, I'm actually very grateful I've never been cyberbullied, but I feel it for people who are, because it's the internet. Once it goes out there, there's no going back. So I really want us all to educate ourselves about the effects of cyberbullying within our youth, especially those with disabilities, because it is that much harder to overcome, simply because most times they're being bullied for things that are part of their identity. It's who they are. And frankly, I think that's incredibly special. So to be bullied and to be attacked about that is just really unfortunate, and we need to open our eyes to that realm. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Very riveting comment, right? All right, so our next question is to my left.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to expand a little bit on what Mrs. Bennett spoke about earlier, our children with disabilities. And I don't want us to leave here without understanding that in the cohort of that population, we have those who are high functioning and we have those who are lower functioning. And so what we find is that the higher functioning, many times the higher functioning ones, they bully the lower functioning students because they feel that because they might have a speech impediment or they may not be able to speak, then they will not report it. You know, and so we do have that phenomenon to deal with within the population itself. And that's something that we really have to work on and teach both those who are conducting the bullying and those who are receiving the bullying, how is it that they are going to cope and become their whole selves.
Yes, thank you so much. Interesting point, because a lot of times when the discussion so far, we've thought of bullying as being abled, bullying disabled. Yes. So thank you so much for that comment. I saw a question somewhere else. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This is not my question, but yes, in Papine, they have a number of schools for persons with different disabilities, schools for the deaf and other ones, and the kids from the different schools bully each other, and they bully the deaf kids. So yeah, there is bullying going on all over, eh? All right, so my question is for Dr. Leiba. I have a question and a request. So my question is, there was a center and you said a lot of deaf kids go there, but where is that center? I'm curious.
Okay, thanks for that. It's in the Halfway Tree Transport Center.
Oh, that's where the deaf community get together and hang out.
Teen Hub.
Oh, Teen Hub.
I showed you a
thank
picture.
you. Thank you.
And I omitted to say that we're building one now in St. Thomas. So we hope in the next few months, maybe March or so, we can open it there. But it really is a haven for some of our children.
And then Teen Hub, I just want to write it down. And then my suggestion or question is for you and for anybody else, if you have a hotline or a number for persons to call, can you always think of deaf kids because they can't call? And if you have a text line or a WhatsApp line, always add that to your list and make a big note, WhatsApp or text, so that the deaf know that that's a number they can use. Or even someone who can't talk out loud, they can't speak, but they can't talk for safety purposes, they can use that number too. But then that would make it more inclusive, so.
Yes, well, actually what I said, You Matter, through your report, which is associated with UNICEF, that's their that's a specialty, texting, WhatsApp or whatever. So one, they recognize that our adolescents sometimes prefer to text than to speak. And two, they realize, yes, that, if you're in a corner and, there's hostility around you, texting, will get the message across. So thank you for that, yes.
And then the deaf kids.
Okay, just to add to it as well, And I know that UNICEF recently did a study, situational analysis of children with disability in Jamaica. And within that document, there's some recommendation as it relates to texts for the deaf community and for those persons who are not so literate. For children, because of the nature of this developmental disability, they can use pictures on it. So it's creating that avenue for all the group of persons with disability, children with disability, to participate and to express themselves.
All right. I believe, Dr. Simpson, you had your hand up a little bit.
Okay, so what I was going to say was along the lines of a comment that was made earlier. I think it was when you mentioned that within the population of persons living with disabilities, there's bullying. So you're very correct. We try to protect different groups of persons, thinking it's outsiders that are bullying them, but they bully each other. Check any of the vulnerable populations, it happens. And I think that's why we have to, when we say education, it has to be everybody. Nobody gets left out of the education. If what we're doing is educating people about bullying, then everybody, boy, girl, man, thing, place, everything, everybody gets educated. If what we're doing is educating persons about social media, everybody gets educated. I don't know how many persons would have seen that little reel where a little boy dials 911. And he called because he wanted help with math. He had math homework, he didn't understand, and he called the police. And when his mother came in, shocked, why are you on the phone with the police? He said, you said call if I need help. And he needed help. You understand? And so while, that's definitely not the kind of help she was thinking when she said that, when we teach our young people how to access help, they will, when they know that there's a space for me to go to if I'm in trouble, they make use of that space. But when we say, ask for help, and then when them say something, we call them down, the space is not there. So let's educate, let's create the space, and let's teach them how to access the space.
All right, thank you so much. So we are wrapping up. I'm just going to take the last two comments. Young man, I know you had your hand up.
Hi everyone again. All right, this question is directed to Mrs. Bennett. I heard you mentioned about discrimination. Children who are disabled sometimes are being violated and their dignity being robbed. My question to you, Mrs. Bennett, is does the JCPD promulgate for specific legislation to be passed by policymakers directly as it relates to discrimination among children with disabilities? Thank you.
Yes, so we have the Disability Act 2014. And since February 14, 2022, the Act is now in effect. And so in the Act, it speaks to discrimination, it speaks to access, and it also, within the Disability Act, there's a tribunal that if one or the parents of a child feel that the child has been discriminated against, the tribunal is there for the mediation and for whatever recourse that needs to be taken.
All right, thank you so much. And our final comment of the afternoon.
Just one short thing I want to inject. Also, our children mirror the communities that they come from. At my school, we have quite a number of students that come from many of the inner city communities in Kingston and St. Andrew. And so if you know those communities very well, you can see the behavior mirrored in our children. So if there is war, upper against lower, you see it coming out in the behavior and the bullying behavior coming out. If it is centered in the home, in some homes, you have the men beating the women or vice versa. We see the behavior coming out in our children, and I'm happy that earlier on we spoke about persons becoming mentors to really help these students who are showing signs of being bullied or they are the bully themselves, because it is the home, it is the community, and we just can't escape it. We just can't escape it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so that is the end of our afternoon discussion. In Dr. Simpson's last comment, she mentioned real. I hope we all know what she was referencing when she mentioned that, right? We're familiar with the social media jargon. Real. All right, so it's a feature on Instagram. So remember, we're making sure that we are up to date with the language of cyberspace and all of that. All right, so thank you so much for listening. And remember that we understand that a lot of times bullying, there is a silent nature to it, but we're encouraging persons to report, and we're ensuring that there are environments that allow for reporting. And Dr. Leiber shared a number of hotlines, rather. And I also want to remind you that CPFSA, we operate a child abuse hotline, and bullying, cyberbullying is also considered a form of abuse. 211, it's free. And we also operate a text and WhatsApp number, and the number is 878-2882. So persons, if they're unable to call for whatever reason, they can communicate with us via that medium. All right, so thank you so much. And right now, I hand back over to Mrs. Reed-Smith. All right. Oh, so panelists, let me take this. Oh. Stay for a little bit. You will be presented with a token of appreciation.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've come to the last leg of the journey. So I'm just going to ask Ms. Bennett if you could please stand. Thank you for, Thank you for educating us on the role of bullying plays in a child with disabilities and how we can become advocates to empower them and make them feel more human and that they have dignity as well as any other able-bodied child.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Dr. Leiber. Dr. Leiber, thank you for coming this afternoon to share with us and give us information that is critical to understanding bullying and cyberbullying from a public health perspective and providing us with some numbers for us to really look into and do further research so we can really tackle that issue. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Mrs. Simpson, aka soon to be Dr. Simpson. Yes, we're speaking it into being, people. Right. So we, on behalf of CPFSA, we know that we have a relationship with you and that we thank you for coming to give a presentation about how we can get youth to care and that we look for a continued partnership and collaboration with you. So thank you for coming. So everyone, that comes to the end of our today's workshop. I would like to remind everyone that we do have 2 additional workshops in the series, and this is coming up in March of 2023. So if you want to come and continue the discussion about bullying, we continue to invite and extend our invitations to all our stakeholders, those who interact with children in different spheres, as we continue this conversation on how we as a community and as stakeholders can combat the issue of bullying. I would like to also thank all our presenters and persons a part of our plenary, both in the morning and in the afternoon, who came and shared with us critical information of how we can treat with bullying in various contexts, whether we're dealing with the females bullying boys. As Dr. Herbert Gay would say, that saving one bully's life would save hundreds of victims, and even the information that Dr. Cordesai gave of how we can provide actionable strategies to administrators, especially utilizing the SWP-BIS approach, that we can utilize this multi-stakeholder network with different schools to combat this issue. And Ms. Anna J. Roberts, who both was a presenter and moderator this afternoon, who gave us critical insight of how we are parenting and raising children within a digital age. As we discuss other topics today, we're looking at children with disabilities and how bullying affects them, that they have a very unique perspective, and how they are a community that is sometimes silenced just by the nature of their disabilities, whatever they may be, and that we need to understand and make an environment that is more human and inclusive for all children involved. I thank again for our other presenters who gave a health perspective of the issue of bullying. So thanks again to Dr. Judith Leiber from Ministry of Health and Wellness, and again our stakeholders from our NGO Children First Agency, as they came to make a presentation of how we can truly get youth to care. I thank all persons who also participated online and were engaged and involved in our breakout room sessions, and I hope that you learned a lot of information from the sessions that we have today. Let us all continue to be advocates against bullying so that we can have resilient children and a safe community for them to grow and thrive. Thank you.